One of the best things you can do in your garden is to add some water for wildlife. Put in a pond and you'll be attracting insects, birds, mammals. Everybody uses water, and that pond will attract them to your garden. Not only that, but it lets you grow new types of plants. If you expand that idea of a pond and include a waterfall, you've also added sound. And that sound is great for drowning out the sound of the properties around you. The key to making these water features attractive is to make them as natural looking as possible. I started making natural ponds 20 years ago. At that time, I was told natural ponds don't work. And for me, a natural pond is one that doesn't use electricity, pumps, chemicals. We just dig a hole in the ground, put in a liner, fill it with water and plants, and there you go. Now, it's not quite that simple. There are a lot of tricks to making it look natural, but that's the basic philosophy. I built one of those ponds and it was extremely successful. And after that, I wrote a book called Building Natural Ponds. Now, that book focuses on building ponds without pumps, so there's no moving water. If we take that idea one step further, we add a waterfall to that pond. And when we add that waterfall, we can make it just as natural looking as the ponds I was building. In this video, we're going to have a look at how to build these kinds of ponds. To do that, I'm going to introduce you to someone who creates great water features that look so natural. His name is Ray Campbell, and he's with Lost Eden Ponds in Minnesota. In this video, I'm going to use his pictures and his video and his building methods for these kind of waterfalls. If you want to see more pictures of Ray's creations, stick around to the end of this video and have a look at some of the ones that I really like. Or you can head over to his website, lostedenponds.com, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. This is the starting pond that we're going to work on. There's a small pond in the middle of this garden. Granted, it's a little messy right now, but it's really a nice little feature, and it's a great way to start with ponds. If you've never built anything before, try building one of these. It's not that large, more or less round in shape, but you can see the fish are happy, the plants are happy, and you can enjoy this for a long time in your backyard. But at some point, you may want to expand this and add moving water to it. Now, if we have a closer look at this pond, you'll see that there's some features of it that aren't quite as natural as you'd like. There's a spillway there. So there's a pump in this pond that's picking up water, pumping it out to this external filter, and then the water flows back into the pond. Now, these systems work fairly well for a small pond, but it's really hard to make them look natural. You always see this spillway, and it's just not a natural waterfall. The edge of the pond also has a plastic division between the pond and the grass, and that just looks terrible. When we build a natural pond, we don't want to see any man-made material in that pond. So that's the goal of this project. Here's that same pond. It's still in place. But Ray and his team now have started to dig out the lower section. First step, remove all that grass. You'll notice that there is a good slope between the upper pond and this area at the lower end where the grass has been removed. This is what's going to allow Ray to create a really nice flow of water from the upper section down to the lower section. The upper pond that is there now is going to be kept in place. It'll be changed a bit, but we'll still have water there, and that upper section will be used as a biofilter for the whole system. Progress has been made on the pond, and the lower section has now been dug out. Notice on the left side there's a series of steps. These steps allow us to put in rocks at different depths, and that'll add more interest to the pond. Once the lower pond is dug out, the next step is to add a pond liner. The rubber material used for these ponds is quite tough, but it can be punctured by sharp rocks and sharp sticks. So it's always a good idea to put in some sort of a protection layer. Now, in smaller ponds, you can use something like old carpet, and that works quite well. But here they're using a commercial product, which is a little easier to use because you can buy it in large sheets and you lay it in place, and you don't have to fiddle around with all kinds of small pieces of carpet. Laying this in the pond is very similar to laying the pond liner, except that it's thinner, it's easier to manipulate, and you don't have to be as worried about the wrinkles and folds. They're going to be hidden anyway. On top of the underlayment, you add the rubber liner. This has now been put in place. You can clearly see the steps down to the lower level. And for this material, it's really important to use a good quality product. And most pond builders still use 45 mil EPDM Firestone rubber liners. These are fish safe, they're extremely durable, and they're going to last a very long time. If you're interested in other options, have a look at my article that I've published on gardenmist.com. It discusses different pond liners and compares the pluses and minuses of those. And I'll put a link to that in the description below. On the right side at the back of this pond, you'll see a black plastic tower. This is a pump vault that's made by EasyPro. It has a detachable lid and allows you to put the pump inside the pump vault. This protects the pump and gives you easy access to the pump. This whole system will end up being covered with rocks so that you don't see it in the final design. This is a view of the pond from the other side, and there's a couple interesting features here. One is that you'll see two lines going down into the pond. These are aeration diffusers, so air will be pumped through these, and that will create bubbles coming up through the water. Now that will do two things. One, and during the summer, it keeps the water mixing more, so you won't have warm and cold layers in the pond. You'll have a more even distribution of the temperature. In the winter time, these bubbles will keep the ice from forming on the pond. Fish don't die from low temperature. As long as the water in the pond stays liquid, they're fine. But they can die in a pond. What happens in colder temperatures is that we get a sheet of ice over the water. The fish are breathing in the oxygen and breathing out CO2. But since there's no gas exchange with the air, the amount of CO2 builds up and the fish actually die from high levels of CO2. One way to prevent that is to put in a diffuser. If you keep bubbles going all winter long, it will keep a hole in the ice. That hole will be large enough for gases to exchange. Oxygen will enter the water, and excess CO2 will go into the air, and the fish will be fine. On the far side, you can also see a few LED lights, and they're pointing right directly at where the waterfall will go. So that will be a really nice feature when you come out and look at this pond at nighttime. Now comes the heavy work. You have to fill this pond with rocks. Use different size rocks, larger ones, smaller ones. Wherever you're trying to build up the side of the wall, like where the waterfall is, you want to use larger rocks that are sitting on top of one another. Around the edge, you can use smaller rocks to fill in spaces between the larger rocks, and try and use a variety of different sized rocks. By using more varied sized rocks, the pond will look much more natural when it's finished. Now these rocks hide the liner, but later on they're going to play a critical role here. They're going to get covered with slime. These are bacteria, and it's those bacteria that are going to keep the water clean. So the surface area of these rocks is really critical. The upper pond has been remade and is also full of rocks. But what you can't see in this picture is that underneath these rocks is a filter system. The filter is made out of a product made by EasyPro called Res Cubes. These are like the old plastic milk containers. They're plastic with lots of holes in them. They're put into the bottom of the pond. Inside of those are biobulbs. Now, biobulbs are these round, spiky things made out of plastic. And the idea here is that we have a lot of surface area around these balls. Those will get coated with bacteria, and it's those bacteria that are cleaning the water for us. The whole thing will be covered with stones, so you don't see the biofilter. The pump in the lower pond will pump water to the bottom of the filter. The water will filter up through the filter, but right past those biobulbs, come out the top, and then run back to the lower pond over the waterfall. The new pond is almost finished. It's full of water. We've got the water flowing. Notice a couple large rocks in this pond. It's always important to put a few larger ones in. It makes the pond look so much more natural. Except for the garden hose that was used to fill the pond, you don't see any other man-made material in or around this pond. That's critical for making the pond look natural. Now let's have a look at the before and after pictures. This is what we started with, and this is the finished pond. Doesn't the sound of moving water add so much to this garden? I think this is a lovely design for this spot, and it's a huge improvement over the pond that was there before. Now let's have a look at some of the other ponds and waterfalls that Ray Campbell has built. You'll notice that the designs are all quite different, but they all have one common thread throughout. You never see any of the man-made plastic, you never see the pond liner, and they all look very natural. In addition to the natural look of these ponds, it's important to understand that they're very low maintenance. Each of the designs uses the natural bacteria to do the cleaning. If you don't want a waterfall, you can build a pond without a pump. That does work. If you like to have moving water, then you can add a pump to add that moving water. You want to use Mother Nature, that's the bacteria, to do the cleaning of the pond for you. If you do it right, these are all very low maintenance when you're done. In my own pond, I never do anything all year long. I don't even clean out the leaves that fall into the bottom. I also have a large waterfall system, and all I do there is clean out the leaves in fall, and I take my pump inside for the winter. Throughout the summer, I don't do anything except top it up once in a while, because you do lose water to evaporation. And that's it. No chemicals, no cleaning of filters, just sit and enjoy. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Ray Campbell and his projects, have a look at his website, lostedenponds.com, or head on over to our Facebook group called Building Natural Ponds. Lots of people post pictures there, and you'll get your questions answered there, and Ray contributes to the site quite a bit. If you're interested in building a pond, I also have the book, Building Natural Ponds. And if you'd like to see more videos about building ponds and waterfalls, have a look at this playlist here. He'll show you several other designs and give you more information about what makes these ponds work so well.